All right, Pest PHP. You know what? This is interesting. As you get older, or at least from my experiences, you become less of an early adopter. So in my 20s, not the case. I was very quick out of the gate. If something new would come out, I would often be one of the first people to try it out. But yeah, once you get older, you have more responsibilities. Maybe you have kids. And then also you just become, I don't know, a little more weary. You have seen the cycle of a new tool. It gets popular, it gets trendy, and then people move on to the next hot thing. And you start to realize, oh, maybe it is, in some cases, a waste of my time to spend energy on this, or it's not a good use of my time. So when it comes to Pest PHP, I always found it interesting, but still I had that thought in the back of my head. Is this going to stick around, or will everyone switch back to PHP Unit? But you know what? It seems like at this point, it's getting more and more popular by the month. And I think it's time I finally check this out. So yeah, for this video, let's pull it up. It's important for me to clarify that you may not learn that much in this video because I will be installing Pest and trying it out for the very first time. So at most, you'll get to see how another developer approaches a new tool. But beyond that, I'm not going to show you any secrets or tips or tricks because I don't know them. However, though, we do cover Pest at Laracasts, just not by me. So you can visit laracast.com/series/pest from scratch, and you can work through this if you're excited at the end of the video. All right, let's get going. So I will click on Get Started here. So first up, we need to install Pest. All right, and I will do this in the Laracast codebase. Let's start by checking out a branch called Pest, and then I will paste that in. Okay, while that's doing its thing, next, of course, I'm using Laravel, so we require a Laravel Pest plugin, and then we call Pest install. Okay, let's copy that. And do we wish to execute code? I sure hope so. All right, that installed. Next, I will paste in the plugin and the artisan command call. Now, I'm not sure what Pest install is going to do. Aha, okay, so it created a test/pest.php. Do you want to start? Not during a video, but I'll do it later. And then what I often do is run git status to see how the artisan command changed my project structure. And yeah, it looks like it just adds that single file. What do we have here? Yeah, so I guess this is sort of like the bootstrap for Pest, and we'll take a look at that. Okay, let's go back to Firefox. Finally, you can run Pest directly from the command line. Yeah, so of course I don't know much about Pest, but I do know that if you have an existing PHP Unit suite, you can just swap that out with Pest and everything's going to work because PHP Unit is a dependency of Pest. Is that right? I think so. All right, so let's give it a shot. We will run vendor bin pest, or I have that in my path, so I can just run pest, and that will run my full suite. Let me exclude any slow API tests that I might have. And actually, real quick, if you're curious how I even knew that this option exists, again, it's because my understanding is Pest is like a wrapper around PHP Unit or dependency. I'm not entirely sure, but I think the spirit is if I can run the command using PHP Unit, then I could also do it through Pest. All right, so this will trigger the Laracast test suite. All right, and there we go. I get green. I have about 1,000 assertions, and it took around 28 seconds. However, if we switch back and scroll down, I do notice that the output looks a little bit different, and I think that's because in my phpunit.xml file, right here, I am overriding the printer class, so I think this would take precedence. Let's give it a shot. Let's delete that, close this out, and start running it again. And yeah, there we go. Now the printer looks exactly like we see in this screenshot. Okay, cool. So the next thing I want to do is check out that test/pest.php file. Yeah, so I assume this is like the bootstrap for Pest. So let's see. The closure you provide to your test functions is always bound to a specific PHP Unit test case class. Yeah, so PHP Unit is a dependency of Pest. Okay, so notice the closure here. Yeah, I do know that Pest, the way you prepare your tests is very different from how you traditionally would with PHP Unit, where you would define a class. Instead, it's going to be far more similar to how you might have done it in the JavaScript world. If you've ever used, I don't know, Jest or Mocha or Cypress, it's a much simpler and basic way to structure things by defining a name that represents your test and then a closure or an anonymous function where you define your various assertions. So I guess when you do it that way, you still need to specify what the parent class for those tests should be, or what the instance should be, I think. So it looks like we're saying here, I want to use Laravel's test case class for all of my pest tests, say that 3 times fast, that are in your features directory. All right, what else do we have here? It looks like we can write custom assertions. That's really cool. That's a simple API. And then finally, it looks like if we need global functions, we can define them here, and they are then available everywhere, I think. Okay, very cool. So let's switch back, and now I want to write my first test. Okay, so you create a file, and yeah, notice how you're not defining a class, you're not inheriting, or at least you're not directly doing that. It's happening behind the scenes. And I believe, yeah, so notice within this closure here, you still have access to a this instance. So yeah, I'm guessing if I switch back, this always confused me actually when I've seen little screenshots. I always wonder, well, what does this refer to? And I guess it refers to whatever you have defined here. So yeah, I wonder if you have a different parent class that you want to use for your unit tests, you could just update this. I assume that would work. All right, so let's do this. Here's how I learn. I'll just copy a snippet here and then paste it into a file. So let's do this. In my test directory, I'm going to add a new file. I'll put it in feature, and we'll call it like a practice test.php. And I will paste this in. All right, so test assert true is true. We provide a callback, and then we run our assertions like we normally would with PHP unit. Looks like we have 2 here, though, that do the same thing. So I guess they're showing you that there are 2 different ways to write your tests. You can use the traditional assertion library that I assume delegates directly to PHP unit, or you can use Pest's expectation library, or whatever you want to call it. And it looks like they have all these helper methods that will probably do the same thing. So let's see, I'm going to command click through here. Yeah, so you can see they have these helper methods to be true, but behind the scenes, it's just delegating to PHP unit. Okay, cool. I got it. So let's give this a run. I will say pest on my test, feature, practice test, and it passes. Cool. So now let's play around with this. My instinct, actually, I do so much JavaScript work. I know Laracasts is dedicated to Laravel traditionally, but I don't know, I'd say almost 50 or 60% of my day-to-day coding is actually on the JavaScript side. So that means this style very much appeals to me because it's already very similar to what I do on the front end. Okay, so expect true to be true. Is there a way to do the opposite, like to be not, to not? Yeah, so sometimes what these libraries will do is they will have an option to, not. So do I call it as a property or a method? We'll try both. Expect not. Yeah, so let's see if this works. And that fails, but we would expect it, right? So if I were to say expect false not to be true, well, that is true, even though that's confusing. That works. Okay, so does that work? Same thing. Okay, so I guess not. Yeah, I guess there's just some kind of magic property that will delegate or something like that. Okay, cool. This ends up being a little cleaner. Expect false not to be true. Okay, what about things like, this is how I learn. I do really simple stuff. Expect 2 plus 2 to equal to b. So again, in the JavaScript space, the difference between b and equal often amounts to comparing the type. So you're not just comparing what the value is, but the type as well. So for example, let's see if I'm right here. To b asserts that 2 variables have the same type and value versus to equal. Assert that two variables have the same value. Yes, and notice it's not, when you call two equal, you're not comparing the type. So you're not checking for identity. In the PHP unit world, I think it's assert same would be the equivalent. So this should pass. Does. And this would pass as well. But yeah, if I did like string 4, well, 2 plus 2 does equal string 4, at least when you compare the value. But if I were to switch this to B, remember that's checking the value and the type. And in this case, the types are not the same. So this would fail. And yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, cool. What about things like expect 2 plus 2 to be greater than 3 or something like that? Do I have 2 be greater than 3? Passes. And again, can I always negate these checks by preceding it with not? So this would fail, right? Yeah. So expect 2 plus 2 to not be greater than 3. That's always confusing, but we're just playing around, and that passes. Okay, cool. So if I had like name equals Joe, and I want to write an assertion, expect name to be Joe. You know, if you've ever, already you can see the JavaScript influence. Yeah, if you've ever written tests before, I think you'll get up to speed very, very quickly. All of this is immediately familiar to me. Okay, let's keep going. So yeah, I did see there's a test function, but then an it function. Again, coming from the JavaScript space, these are often interchangeable. So I use some frameworks where you could do it or test or there's another one. I can't think of what it is, context or something like that. But they all are basically synonyms. So notice how when using the it function, your test names prepend it in the return description. Yeah. So take a look at the printer. It asserts true is true, but the actual name is asserts true is true. That's kind of cool. So if I do test, what do I get here? Sorry, expect true to be true. I did it again. See, you can see I'm indoctrinated by the JavaScript community. So yeah, test asserts true is true. So my guess is it and test are identical other than just this one little difference. It asserts true is true. And again, this works very well for me because as you'll find at the end of the video, so many of the tests I write with PHP unit always begin with it. It comes from, the BDD space. It was very common in the Ruby world. Okay, looks good to me. Let's continue on. The underlying test case. Yes, so this is what I want to know more of. When I use this, like what's available to me? Like when I write this test, how do I know that assert true is available to me? So it looks like when we have a closure, the default class, it is always bound to a specific test case class, and by default, that's PHP unit's test case, okay? In real-world applications, you may have to change it. Yes, so of course, if I'm writing a Laravel test that interacts with the model or the database, I can't extend from PHP unit's test case. So let's do this, test pest. Like if I didn't have this there at all, and then I wanted to do something like series factory create. This alone, I think, should blow up because we are extending from PHP unit's test case. Yes. So yeah, notice series factory is not found. Okay, but if I were to bring this back, now we're saying, no, I want to use Laravel's test case class that extends and bootstraps the framework. Then I'm not running an assertion here, but also it's not going to immediately blow up on me, right? Right, exactly. Okay, let's switch back. So the uses function, yeah, this confuses me a little bit. It binds a class, a trait, or a closure to your test file. This is how you would bind a trait. So that's kind of a unique idea. So I call it uses, I give it a class or even a trait, and then those methods are mixed in, right? So I could then access any of those methods within my expectations. Let's see, the end function lets you use the given class inside the specified folder. Okay. You can use multiple uses, and then they get merged, right? So use a test case. Okay, so this is how, if I want to use some helpers like refresh database or lazily refresh database. That's cool. Okay. Assertions. So we've already talked about this. And again, this should be immediately familiar to you if you come from PHP unit because it's the same assertions. Assert true, assert false, assert contains. As you can see here, they link to PHP unit's assertion library because it's all the same stuff. But then, let's see. No. Okay, so am I right that expectations are just another way to do the exact same thing? So it's not like you would always do both, although I guess you can. I would imagine most people just pick one that they like the most and they stick with it. At least, again, in the JavaScript world, that's usually how these things are structured. You pick your API, so to speak. Yeah, assertion. So write it as an assertion or write it as an expectation. Okay, and now here's a cool thing with expectations. There's a lot to see here. But again, remember, you don't have to memorize all these because they're very intuitive. So it's not like I would sit down and every day memorize 5 or 6 of these, right? It's always going to be the same thing. So if you want to check like, I expect this to be falsy. Well, I don't have to know that there's a falsy method because it's going to cover everything. So I can just type hint it, right? Let's see, let's go back. Expect false to be falsy, and I can guess the method name is my point. For all of these things, you could guess what it should be. So if I expect some kind of method call to throw something, to throw some kind of exception, or to be greater, again, you can guess what the assertion would be. All right, so don't let that part overwhelm you. To be empty, to be true, to be false, to be greater, to have count. Yeah, so like expect hello, if I can type, Laracasts to have a count of 2. Cool. And actually, while I'm doing this, ideally, I would love it if I could run these tests directly from PHP Storm. So let's try to do that now. I will go into plugins, and let's look for Pest. All right. Apply, restart. And then I think I have to configure it. That's usually what you do. Test frameworks. Let's add another one, Pest local, path to the Pest executable. Well, first let's do the configuration file. That would be directly in my project. I don't know if this will figure it out on its own. Path to Pest executable. Well, yeah, it would be vendor bin pest, right? Apply. Okay, and then, oh, here we go. Can I just click that, run it? Cool. So using PHP, it's delegating the pest. It overrides the printer, but yeah, I think all of this works. So can I just hit Command-T like usual? All right, and this behaves exactly the way it would if I were working with PHP unit. All right, so I can tell you what I like immediately is the fact that I can switch to Pest without feeling like I have to migrate my entire test suite. Although, having said that, I'm pretty sure that Laravel Shift has a shift that will automatically convert your test suite. So let's see, Laravel Shift Pest. And yeah, let's see, convert your test from PHP unit to Pest. Some free promotion for Shift. All right, so yeah, $9, it's the cost of lunch, right? So you run this shift and it will automatically update your suite and submit a PR, which is cool. But yeah, otherwise you don't even have to do it because if you want, you can just keep those as they are or incrementally refactor them when you return to them, or you stick with both, which I really like. So it is a low barrier to entry is my point. Okay, so most of this stuff like setup and teardown, I think it's going to be very similar. Yeah, so instead of having a setup method or a before each, you would just define that in your test file. It looks like they have support for higher order tests. So if you're familiar with these with Laravel collections, it looks like you can do something similar. I'm going to skip over that. We can test for exceptions. This is very cool. So it throws an exception, you have your code, and then you declare it on top of the it call, which I really like. We can group, we can have dependencies, we have data sets. So if you're familiar with data sets in PHP Unit, the API is so much better here. It has emails with this data, and then each of these items would be passed as an argument. So in this case, if you have 2 items in your with call, then this expectation will be run 2 times, 1 for each item. Again, that's very similar to PHP Unit. This is just a much nicer API. All right, so Laravel plugins, what can we do here? We installed this already, right? So pest install, pest test. Okay, so is that how I would quickly whip up? Pest test, foo. All right, switch back, foo test. All right, and they give me a little stub there. But again, what's kind of cool is you don't even necessarily need the artisan command because there's no big boilerplate that you have to do. Like with PHP Unit, I would have to do something like this, class foo test, extends test case. You know, with this, there's no boilerplate, which is immediately appealing to me. Okay. What else do we have here? Data set creates a new data set. Email. I'm assuming this is like a dedicated file for declaring your data sets so that they could be used throughout the whole project. Maybe. We're going to skip over that. Available function. Yeah, so I have seen this in the wild where they just call get. So this is interesting. So are these methods on that you would normally interact with PHP Unit? They're available as functions. So for example, could I say use, can it find that? Get. Will that work? Oh yeah, it does. And then I could do things like get the home page, and then just run assertion. Yeah, pretty cool. So assert status. So in this case, I'm actually making a request, a GET request to the Laracasts homepage and asserting that I have a 200 response status code. So we'll give that a run. And yeah, it does return green. Okay, that's pretty cool. So I guess this is an optional thing if you just want to use it. Yeah, it is a function. But then it delegates. So these are little helper functions that you can import, I guess, if you just want to clean things up a little bit, which I like. Okay. And then it looks like there are some extra expectations that are Laravel specific. I expect this to be a collection before each. Assert database hat. All of this, if you're familiar with testing Laravel in PHP Unit, will be pretty similar, I think. Okay. And then looks like lots of stuff here for like mocking. So would I need a special plugin for mocking? But why? Why can't I just use mockery directly? It adds mocking capabilities. It's a very simple API built on top of mockery. So yeah, I guess I could use mockery if I want, or I could use this little wrapper around it. Okay, so I feel comfortable. So now what I want to do is open, just a random test class that I have for Laracasts and see what it would feel like to manually convert that over to Pest. So let's get started. Let's do, I think I have one called path test. This is a very simple test class for Laracast paths. So for example, if I go into the path, yeah, these are just basic assertions for this section of the website. All right, and again, I call these unit tests. They do hit the database. You can call them feature tests or integration tests if you want, or model tests. I just keep it simple. I throw it all in the unit directory. A path consists of levels. That's the terminology I use. Every level has its own set of series. In fact, I'll just show you all of this. Each one of these is a level. A level consists of series. So a series is attached to a level, and a level belongs to a path. Okay, so I'm saying if I have the path, I should be able to get all of the series directly off of that path object. And then we can also calculate the user's completion rate for a level. All right, again, you don't even need to worry about this code. All I care about is how I would convert it over to Pest. So the first thing I'm going to do is run the suite. So I'll say test, feature, test, feature, or it's in the unit directory. Unit, path, test. All right, and all of those pass. So now I think it should be as simple as get rid of the class wrapper. All right. Get rid of the namespace, reformat. And then next, all of these functions should turn to it calls, right? So let's select all of them, and I will use multiple cursors to replace it with a call to it. And then function, is this right? Let's close this out. Or who knows, maybe I can get AI to do this for me. Wouldn't it be cool if I could just say, convert this to Pest? I bet there's a way to do that and reformat. Okay, so now I don't have to import that. Okay, so here's what I'm curious about. Is this enough? Like if I run it again, will it just work? No, it doesn't. Call to undefined method, sign in. Okay. So where do I have sign in? Sign in is a helper method I have that just, really I could just use the acting as method that Laravel provides, but this one does a couple other things for my project. Here's what I think. I think it's because this right here. So remember how I said my unit tests, I kind of cheat. They're not totally isolated. They will touch Laravel in the database. But in this case, it's saying use Laravel's test case class only in the feature directory. So I also want to do it in the unit directory. So it looks like I can have multiple targets. Let's try feature unit. All right, so come back, and I hope that makes it work. Otherwise, I'm going to need to take a minute. And it passes. Okay, come on. That's pretty cool. We have to admit that is pretty cool. So if I come back, it was and you know what? I don't even need these, the test declaration here. I usually do that because in my PHP unit tests, I like to omit the initial test keyword. So instead, I just write it like a sentence, and then I would add this test declaration above. But now, I don't have to do that at all, like so. And then next, again, notice how so many of my tests already started with it. So if I take a look here, now it says it has levels. So I do like this, that I can return to writing it like a sentence. It consists of levels, you know? It consists of series, and then come down, it knows the completion rate for a user. So if I give that another run, yeah, notice how much better that reads. And not just in terms of the printer, but also when I visit this file in the future, I'm not having to parse camel casing or snake casing. It just reads that much better. So immediate wins in my book without knowing anything else is it's less code to write. It's simpler. I can phrase my tests like actual sentences. All of these are pretty big wins in my book. And then if we want, I could swap this out with the expectation library, right? So I could change this assertion, again, only if I want. I wouldn't do this with my older tests, but I would do it going forward. Or again, maybe Laravel Shift does that as part of the migration. I'm not sure. Maybe not. But yeah, if I were to switch this, I could say expect path levels count to be 3. And then what else do we have here? Same thing here. So this is an assert count call. So I could say expect levels, grab the first one, go to the path, grab all of the series. And again, I don't know that there's a toHaveCount method, but I can guess. And that's the entire point of a good API. Whatever you need, you could probably just guess that it's available. toHaveCount of 6. And then what else do we have here? This one's a little bit more wonky. I probably need to refactor some of this. But yeah, right here, let's do this. Expect. So basically, I'm just saying for a current level, call completion rate, I feed it a user, and that will return to me what the completion rate is for that user for the series within the level. So I could say to be 50. And then I think I have another check to confirm that if they finish the next level, then it should boost them up to 100. Okay, give it a run. And yeah, that returns green. Pretty cool. So what I'm recognizing here is if I switch over to Pest, I still get to retain all of that PHP unit knowledge. It's not like that goes out the window. I can still leverage it here. but also it's just so much less code to write, which again, I'm getting pretty old. It's very appealing to me. Okay, let's do one more and then we'll call it a day. I have one called Profile Visibility Test. This is just a handful of methods that confirm or test whether or not you can see a user's profile, because you do have the option of marking it as private. But for example, as an administrator, I can still see your profile, or a team owner can see the profile of the team members, even if one of those members has marked their profile as private, because it's the manager. So anyways, that's what these do. Don't worry about it too much. Let's go ahead and migrate it. So get rid of the namespace, get rid of the class wrapper, and then what else? Get rid of these test doc blocks. All right, and then no public. So I would get rid of all of that, multiple cursors. Let's see if I can do this. And then have our closure here. All right, and then I think I have to do this manually. I could do it, but I'd have to figure out what the keystroke is. Let's just do it one by one. Give it a reformat. Nope, that was not right. Oh, I have double braces. No. No, reformat. Get rid of the test case. And let's give this one a run. This is in feature profile visibility test. 3, 2, 1. Boot up the framework. This is going a little bit slow, but I don't think that's related to Pest. Yeah, and that works too. So already, I don't know very much about Pest, but I'm able to work with it almost instantly. I already know how to pretty quickly migrate over. And then again, at this point, I would just update my names. So it shows a public profile. It does not show a private profile. Admins can view any profile, so it allows admins to view any profile. And then what about this one? Team owners can see a member. Okay. It allows team managers to view private member profiles. So yeah, you can see here, we build up a team, but I have 2 members on the team where they have marked their profile as private. And then we say, okay, well, let's log in the user as the manager. And then let's move that to interpolation. Log in as the team manager, have them visit the profile page for that user, and rather than being redirected, they should have a 200 response. They should be able to see that profile. So I can test it directly within PHP Storm using that Pest plugin. Everything is pretty cool here, and you know what? Maybe it's a little too early to say, but I think I'm sold. So let me know what you think. If you have any tips for me, please do leave a comment below this video. And I don't know, I'm going to stick with it and see how this turns out. See you later.